Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mac Power Users. My name is David Sparks. I'm joined, as always, by Stephen Hackett. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I am excited. We have been doing this experiment with Arc Browser in the background for a while now, and we finally get to turn the microphones on and talk about it. So I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Yeah, this one has been requested by quite a few people. Arc, I think, made waves, this new web browser, and it does a lot of things differently. And we will get into all of that this time.
Yeah. Quick preliminary announcement. If you're listening to this on the day of release and check your email the day after, or go to macsparky.com, you'll see that the OmniFocus 4 Field Guide lives. And it's publishing the day after this show. And I've been hard at work on it. If you're interested in OmniFocus and want to get better at it, this is a good one.
Yeah.
More on that later, though.
Yes, we'll be getting into that, I'm sure. But congratulations. I know how much work goes into these things, and I'm glad you've got another one out the door.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I feel like it came out really good. So I'm happy to share that. Today on More Power Users, Microsoft had what I consider their M1, moment. They announced their new ARM processors that are kind of in competition with the MacBook Air. Lots of good news for Microsofties and people who like to use Windows. And I think, honestly, something kind of exciting for Apple fans, too. I feel like this is going to spur on some competition that we probably will benefit us. So we're going to talk about that today on More Power Users.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Okay. I want to get into some of the basics of Arc and the company behind Arc, because it's not every day we get a new web browser. I think when I was considering this, we've been using Arc for a while now, like you said, kind of in the background. It just struck me one day, it's like, when's the last time we got a new browser? It doesn't happen very often, and it's even more rare that it's not one of the big companies, right? We got Microsoft Edge, but that's Microsoft. Yeah. It's the company that brought you Internet Explorer. We have Chrome from Google. We have Safari from Apple. It's kind of a rare thing that an independent browser pops up, but the browser company launched Arc really not that long ago, just about a year ago. And they have a lot of new ideas. They don't feel tethered, I don't think, to kind of how browsers have worked up to this point. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a non-platform vendor. It's not Microsoft, Apple, or Google. It's a little startup, little company that wants to cause trouble. And they're starting a new browser. And it's a very interesting philosophy they have about it. And it starts with, money, right? They've got to have money. So they do have some cash in the bank.
They do, yeah. So they raised $50 million back in March for a total of $128 million, and that, of course, raises the question, right? A lot of these companies that take investment, you got to talk about the business model. And Arc says they are not going to sell user data. We have a section a little bit later about their privacy policies. They say they're not trying to dominate the browser market, and they don't want to live under the golden arches of Google, which is a funny statement. If you read the browser companies' like blog posts and what their CEO talks about, there's some like attitude in it that I kind of find enjoyable, kind of taking jabs at the big players.
Well, I mean, it's a criticism that I think has some merit. They say, look, there was a lot of browsers. And then the guys at Google came up with the idea for Google search, where you type in a question and it gives you a bunch of links. And then they realized they could monetize those links. And then development of browser and search technology kind of stopped there because everybody's making money. I mean, it just came out in the news. Apple gets billions of dollars every year from Google by making Google the default search engine in Safari. So the way you make money with browsers is by hooking onto Google and getting paid for giving them data. And this company's attitude is they're kind of like rebellious upstarts, right? They're like, no, we're not going to do that. We want to continue the development of browsers. And as we go through the show, you're going to hear there's a bunch of features in this that aren't on any other browser. And they're there primarily because they're not running it through the Google spigot. They're not getting paid by Google by running search through them. So they're free to do other stuff, but they're also not going to make the kind of money people do. Like, they're not going to make the billions that that Apple does off Google.
That's right. Yeah, that's a very complicated topic. Apple taking money for the for Google to be the default.
There's a video. I'll put a link in the show notes where they interview the CEO, and he says, "Look, at one point, people ask him, well, how are you going to monetize this? Like, I think that's a legitimate question for something like a browser because does have user data, and we are concerned about our privacy. That's where he said they'll never sell data. And he says, look, we've got some products like Arc for Teams. We're going to talk about Boost later in the show. He says we've got pieces of our software that we can monetize, but that's the goal, And what he said was, we don't want to be the biggest browser ever. We're not out there to conquer the market. They know they're not going to conquer the market because they're not a platform. They're not shipping 1 billion iPhones, or they're not Google, but they can move the ball forward on the browser experience. And if people want it, they can use it. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they ask users, voluntarily or for additional features to pay something. But I'm okay with that. We've been talking a lot lately. I talked about Kagi search over in the labs, $10 a month to do search, but it has no ads in it, and it's way better than Google. I mean, there's a lot of things people are willing to pay for. Not everybody, but some people. And I think you can run a legitimate business, in that margin.
Mm-hmm. Even as independent as they are, though, they're not fully independent in the sense of their technology stack. Arc is based on Chromium, which is the open source browser engine at the center of Google Chrome. And that comes with pluses and minuses. The biggest upside, in my opinion, is that you can run Chrome extensions in Arc. You don't have to wait for developers to build special versions of their extensions just for Arc. Because Arc's not a very big browser, right? The user base is small. And so to get somebody like Grammarly or 1Password or your favorite ad blocker or whatever, like waiting around for them to notice that Arc is a thing, that could slow things down. We've talked about that with Safari over the years. And Apple, a couple of years ago, kind of shifted gears with Safari extensions to make it easier for developers to port their extensions to Safari, because even the mighty Safari was having similar issues with adoption when it came to extension developers. And so when I set up Arc for the first time, I was like, beep, 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 pick the extensions that I want for my, Chrome, and was kind of up and running. But it also does come with some downsides, right? There's some rough edges where Arc and Chromium kind of meet. So like Command Y shows the Chromium history panel. Like Arc hasn't dressed that up, right? Even though Arc has kind of its own archive feature, which we'll talk about. So that there are some places where Arc's ideas and like the engine they're building on, I don't want to say they're at odds. I think that's an overstatement, but sometimes you kind of fall in between the cracks a little bit of what they're building atop of. And you got to be comfortable running Chromium, right? Now, most of what Google does for its ad business, that takes place at the Chrome browser level, not the Chromium engine level. Microsoft Edge is also built on Chromium. Like Chromium has taken over the world, and some people aren't comfortable with that or don't want to run Chromium. I'm not here to judge that either way, but I think it was smart of them to do this as opposed to branching out on their own. Like, hey, we're gonna build something from the ground up. That doesn't feel feasible to me in 2024.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one of the downsides, and I didn't do enough testing to answer this question definitively, is that it's more power intensive. I mean, Safari has this great, very efficient engine. And if you're on a laptop and you're running a Chromium browser, whether it's Arc or Google or whatever, they generally use up more power. They're more power hungry, which means your battery's not going to last as long. And that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and looking at it, I had Activity Monitor open a good bit in the last few weeks looking at this. It does seem to fall kind of in between Chrome and Safari in terms of power usage, but my tests are in no way conclusive or scientific. So I think Safari, it's safe to say, is still the most energy efficient on macOS. Yeah. But I don't think Arc is quite as bad as Chrome either.
And I think there's a lot of variables involved. But
yeah.
One good piece of news is it's not an Electron app.
Yeah. It's written in Swift. It's
Yeah.
When Arc first came out, I had the assumption that it was Electron because so many things are. But the Mac app is written in Swift, and as of our recording, when the Windows 11 version of Arc is like brand new, and that is also written in Swift. Swift is cross-platform, but in reading about it, and we'll have some links in the show notes if you want to explore more, the Arc team had to do a lot of work to get Swift on Windows doing what they needed it to do, which is just really fascinating to see a company take that on with Electron just sitting there waiting for them. It would have been much easier and cheaper, I'm sure, to just build this in Electron, but they chose to do Swift. I think this company cares about the user experience on the Mac and iPhone, and I think that shows in their choice there.
Yeah, and that honestly puts them on my radar. It's like they care enough to do this, then I should check this app out. I mean, really, it really resonates with me. I was talking earlier about how they feel like search and browser technology has been basically stuck since everybody figured out to monetize through Google. Because they're not following that, they're really stretching an envelope on features and AI. But we're going to talk about that later. I think that deserves more time.
Yeah, there's a lot of AI features. That's where they are distinguishing themselves in a lot of ways. We'll get to the features, but it does raise two questions in my mind. One, how long is that going to be a differentiated experience, right? How long until Safari and Chrome have more of these tools? Because Microsoft Edge already does have a lot of these type things in it. But of course, there's also the privacy angle because they're using OpenAI and other AI vendors, for lack of a better word, and it's a new company, right? So what does their privacy policy look like? They have a really, honestly, I think a pretty straightforward privacy page over on the Arc website. Again, there'll be links to all this stuff in the show notes. They seem to say in very clear language that they are not in the business of monetizing their customers' browsing information. So they don't know what websites you visit. They don't see what you're typing into the browser. They don't sell your data to third parties. There is some data exchange with OpenAI and Anthropic, their AI partners, but they seem to have other plans for monetization that you talked about later, monetizing maybe certain features, building out features and instances for teams, collaboration. I can very easily see like an Arc Pro thing coming down the road, like you said. We're like, hey, if you want more, you can pay for it monthly. They're doing this differently than Google has done, and to a lesser extent, Microsoft has done.
Yeah,
and I think that's good, and I appreciate that I don't have to have a law degree to read their privacy policy. Like it is, I think, as straightforward as one of these things can be, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, and I watched a bunch of videos. They're very transparent. The CEO puts all these YouTube videos up where he just sits down and answers questions and talks about, their plans and what they're trying to do. And I feel comfortable. Either the guy snowed me or he's telling the truth. And I feel comfortable that they are not looking to become a gazillion dollar browser, that's going to take over the world. They're looking to create kind of a power user experience for people who want to have a discriminating kind of experience. And I think probably you may be parting with a few bucks at some point in the future because of it. And I am okay with that. That's when I thought, this probably deserves a Mac Power Users episode because this is the kind of browser that I think folks like us should be interested in.
Yeah.
And I've been very hesitant to even spend significant time outside of Safari for a lot of reasons. But, I've really enjoyed the last month of playing with this browser. And like I said, looking forward to talking about it today.
One question we have seen about this is, what if I'm using Apple's iCloud password, iCloud keychain stuff? A lot of our listeners are, and it works really well, obviously, in Safari. But some time ago, Apple released a Chrome web extension that will talk to your iCloud keychain. And because Arc is built on Chromium, that extension just works in Arc. So you can install the iCloud keychain extension in Arc, and it has access to all of your passwords saved in an Apple system. Now, I'm using sponsor of this very episode, 1Password. Their extension also works, so you have optionality there. But that was, I think, a common question in looking at this of like, well, I've moved all my passwords over there. What do I do? And because of their, again, I think wise decision to bring in Chrome extensions, that just works. And so, and kudos to Apple too. Like I want to say this as well, that they have spent the time to make iCloud Keychain accessible in other browsers, because for a long time it wasn't. And I think they view Safari and iCloud, like all that stuff, as a benefit to their users to all be in one system. But at some point they realized, I think, hey, we got to make these accessible to Chrome as well. If anything, for their Windows customers who maybe have an iPhone, which there are billions of people that fit that category, but Arc benefits from it as well.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by 1Password. Get 20% off. Just go to onepassword.com/MPU and start using the security tool that both Steven and I use. We're talking a lot today in the show about the Arc browser, and the reason why we were able to test it out and use it so easily is because we have our passwords saved to 1Password. 1Password can work with any browser. You just plug it in, turn it on, and all your passwords come in. It's really the best way to store your secure information because you have complete control over it, all covered by that 1Password security. I don't want to trust some Chrome plugin or synchronization engine to keep my passwords. I'm not sure who manages that or how it works, but I know 1Password works and it's secure. So 1Password is perfect when trying out new browsers. In the case of Arc, I just set up the extension, turned it on, and I was off to the races. But 1Password is way more than something you can use personally. It's a service you can use with your business, your family, your enterprise. It doesn't matter what your needs are, 1Password has a solution for you, and it is the solution for security on the internet. I've been using it since they were a brand new application so many years ago. They're so much bigger now, but they still have that same mandate. They want to make sure that you have the most secure data and that you protect yourself on the internet. Go check it out at onepassword.com/MPU. That URL one more time is onepassword.com/MPU. Go there to get 20% off and sign up today.
So let's talk about the app itself. We've talked some about the background and some of the questions that kind of come up from that. The desktop app is pretty unusual. They have some ideas that are not in line with, say, the way Safari, Chrome, and Edge work. The sidebar is the most important part of the user interface in Arc, whereas in Safari and others, the sidebar, I think, is almost an afterthought. Like I very rarely go to the sidebar. In Safari, I have all my bookmarks, up at the top. But in Arc, the sidebar is sort of the hub, and you can't hide it. You don't have to have it visible all the time, but things are a lot easier if it's visible all the time. And you kind of have this cascading system of organization, the top level of which is spaces. And the way to think about spaces is the way you could think about in Chrome, you have different profiles. So these are collections of settings and bookmarks and history that are separated from each other. So you could have a personal space and then a space for work and then a space for your side gig. And the data is kind of siloed in between those spaces. And I really like that feature in Chrome in particular because I have several Google accounts that I just need to log in and out of occasionally. Like if I need to manage something in a Google Workspace for work or for a client or something like that. So I got a bunch of profiles set up in Chrome, and Arc has a very similar thing. They just happen to call it Spaces.
Yeah, and they had this in Safari, but I've not found it to be as stable as it is in Arc, where you can set up groups of tabs on the sidebar. But I really like the idea of it because, this kind of gets to contextual computing. Just give me the types of websites I need to see for the type of work that I'm doing. Yeah. And I think it's good.
I think a lot of people use that in Chrome just to separate work and personal, right? If they have one computer for both, which a lot of people do, or even different types of tasks, maybe at work. And so I was excited to see Arc have this. Confusingly, they also have profiles, so they're reusing the Chrome word, but they use it for something else. Profiles in Arc are basically just different sets of default settings. And so these settings are about logins, cookie, browser history, how the archive is handled, which we'll talk about in a minute. And some of these settings, again, this goes to Arc is thinking about these things differently, are really modern. So my favorite example is, what if I want to create a new document? Now, Safari and Chrome and others basically have no concept of this, right? Documents, we're a browser. What are we doing here? But someone at Arc had the idea, well, a lot of your documents are online now, right? A lot of people aren't opening Microsoft Word, they're opening Google Docs or they're opening Notion or something like that. And you can tell Arc that when I create a new document, I want it in one of those online repositories. So I have mine set up to Google Docs. So I can be in Arc and I can open or create a new document, and it just is a new Google Doc in the root level in my Google Drive folder in my signed in account. And it's there in the sidebar so I can get back to it. And it's kind of turns into a little scratch pad. And I think that's super clever and really modern in a way that other companies aren't thinking yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the sidebar mechanism has grown on me. Like you, I wasn't 100% on it to begin with, but another feature of it that I really like is the pinned tabs. Like you can have your favorite search tools or, websites that you go to, maybe your work website or your personal blog or whatever, all right up there and just get to them with a single click. And I think that's quite useful.
I think so too. I think it's really clever, and it's something, again, other browsers have things like this, but they're thinking about it in a new way that I think is more useful.
Yeah, it reminds me of, as in Safari, you have the little pin tabs on the left side. Like, not a lot of people use this feature, but if you have a Safari tab open, you can right click and pin it, and then it stays. But the icon is a little bigger here, and yeah, it's nice. There is a limit to it. I think I'm not sure what the total number is. I guess you looked it up. Is it 12? I guess
it's 12. Yeah.
Outline. Yeah, I've got 6, but it's enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just well done.
Yeah, and you can customize the icons, so you can pull from emoji or kind of I've come to call them the reminders set of icons. Like, it's not full SF symbols. Again, I plead my case to Apple and every developer, give me the whole SF symbol library to choose from all the time.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah.
But so, like, for me, my first one is a Google document that I call current.
Yeah.
To back up a little bit, I've been using Arc full time for a while with my work with Underscore on Widgetsmith and Pedometer++ and Sleep++. And so, like, my whole Underscore world is in Arc. And we have a Google Doc called Current where we just have like what we're working on because we're working asynchronously. And I made that a pinned bookmark, pinned link, but it was just a Google Doc icon. It's like, well, that's not very exciting. So I changed the icon to a star. And it's like, I know what that visually means. I can get to it really easily. And I actually like this implementation better than Safari. Safari pinned tabs for me, there's something about them that just doesn't click in my mind somehow. Like, they're permanent, but they're not. And I don't know. I like this a lot better.
Yeah, for me, I use the top row for search. So I've got Kagi search, Perplexity, and ChatGPT, and then below that, I've got kind of the MacSparky stuff that I'm working on, and that seems to work as well. But it just a nice kind of I think it's an easy to understand user interface. So in this sense, maybe this is not necessarily for power users, but you set up a group of folders down the left sidebar with frequently used bookmarks and tabs that you use. You've got the favorites on top, and then they've got a line, and below that is like a recent history. And that stuff shows up there as you do searches and you go throughout your day, so you can easily go back through your history. It's more visual. I think like moms may get this more, I guess that's a pejorative use of the word. I mean, you know what I mean? People who are not power users may get that more, but then you can drag those up above the line and then make them something that is that's something that's permanent and it's going to be there forever. And it's clever. And then there's some AI features baked into that too. We'll talk about those later. Then at the bottom, you've got basically the different, setups. So I've got a personal and a work one, but you can have a bunch of them. So I could conceivably have one for podcasts and one for field guides and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very easy to understand.
Yeah. At first, it's a little weird because it's like, wait, what are bookmarks and what are open tabs? And then you kind of realize the hierarchy in the sidebar. And I've come to really dig it, where I've got stuff that is like sort of like temporarily open, but it's easy to make a permanent pinned tab. It's easy to demote something. And I feel like in Safari, maybe other people feel this way, maybe they don't. I have just like bookmark bloat over time because I'll add something to a bookmark folder, and I may only need it for 3 months, right? Maybe a project I'm working on or something temporary, but then I never go in there and clean them out. And then one day I'm looking for something like, oh gosh, this like document from 2022 that I haven't looked at in 2 years is still bookmarked for some reason, and then I'll go through and have a purge. But in Arc, these things feel more alive and more fluid, and so I can kind of promote things and demote things as time goes on.
Yeah, nice. All right. What about this whole thing, though? You've got the sidebar. Oh, and one last thing. I'm sorry. On the sidebar, Command S is your friend. Command S, which is always save in every other app. In this case, it hides and shows the sidebar. So when you want the sidebar to go away, it's just Command S. And that once you nail that one down, it gets even easier to use this browser. But moving on. There's no tabs, Stephen. How do you use a browser with no tabs?
This is perhaps the strangest thing in Arc to people who are coming from a traditional browser. The sidebar with all of your saved things, those are also your tabs. And so bookmarks and tabs are kind of the same thing, where I can very easily see which one of my pin tabs, which are like bookmarks, are actually open. Like, this is hard to talk about, but in practice, it's actually pretty fluid. And you can set up a split view where you have more than one page open at a time, which you can't do in a bunch of other browsers. But their idea is like, if you're browsing, you're going to have just one thing open at a time, and you're kind of moving through the sidebar to get in between them. And it means there's less visual clutter because your bookmarks and your open tabs are all kind of the same thing. And you get a little indication in the sidebar of what is currently open. And if you have navigated away from what is the saved URL, then you get a little slash and you can kind of see what's going on. And if you hover, you get controls over it. It takes like an hour, maybe not even that, to get used to it. It is hard to talk about, but in practice, it's pretty fluid.
Yeah, in some ways it's better because, with tabs, it's, depending on how many tabs you have open, you can't really see the names of them. So it's a little bit of hunt and peck as you look through tabs to find it. When you put it in the sidebar, you've got more space to put the proper name of the website, so it's easier to find the one you want. There is also an additional AI feature that tries to organize them for you if you turn that on. So there are some benefits to it, but you also lose that space in the screen because you've got the sidebar open more often than not because you want to be able to navigate between tabs. They're not even called tabs, I guess, windows.
Yeah. It's the language is confusing because they're using traditional browser language in kind of new ways.
Yeah. You mentioned the full screen pages versus the split view, and that's a feature that honestly I've never seen in a browser before. I actually discovered it by accident. Whenever I try a new app, I don't normally go to the manual. I just kind of start playing with things, and I was manipulating some of my sidebar websites, and I accidentally put one on top of the other, And then suddenly I had a split screen with both websites. I'm like, whoa, what's this? So you can combine two websites or even three to have a view to have all three of them open at the same time, which in some ways is better than tabs because then you can actually see data on two sites at the same time.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of a nice feature.
It is. And it's great if you're on a big display. It's a little cramped, like just on a laptop. But again, you can collapse the sidebar and get some more space.
Yeah. I guess getting back to the lack of tabs, to open a new window, you still use the same keyboard shortcut that we've all been trained on, Command T. But Command T in Arc is not just a new tab button. I think it's more like a command palette that you see in a lot of apps like in Obsidian and Craft. There's a lot of apps these days that put some sort of command palette in the application. And it's a very quick way to use the keyboard to do things. So at its most basic level, if you hit Command T, you can type in a URL and it'll open that URL. And that'll get added to the sidebar. It'll become the active window. And that's just one more, web view that you've got looking at. But you can do more with it. You can execute a Google search. If you type maps, you can go through Google Maps. You can move the open window. So like if you want to move it to a different space, you can do that, or focus on a space. It's also a way to get to settings. If you hit Command T and type settings, it opens up the application settings. Mm-hmm. I think it's really meant to be kind of like a steering wheel for the application.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen this in a bunch of other apps, and I think it works really well. Again, taking something from Notion or Craft or Slack or whatever, bring it to a browser, a new idea, right? Like thinking about Safari, if you want to manage your history or your bookmarks or your settings, they're all in different places, and you've got to know how to get around them. And I think most people don't know how to get around them, so they never do. This episode of MPU is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. So whether you're starting out with a new project or you're managing a growing brand, with Squarespace, you can stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything, products, services, and even content. Squarespace's Blueprint AI and SEO tools make it easy to get started. You can build a completely personalized website using their new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up, tailored to your brand or business and optimized for every device. Then easily launch your website and get discovered quickly with integrated optimized SEO tools, so you show up more often to more people and grow the way that you want. And if you're running a store on Squarespace, you can integrate flexible payments to make checkout seamless for your customers with simple but powerful payment tools. Accept credit cards, PayPal, and Apple Pay, and in eligible countries, offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. I love building on Squarespace because it has all the tools you need. Let's talk about stores for a second. If you've got content you need to sell, you can put that behind a paywall on your site and even set up courses so people can walk through your content the way that you want them to. But maybe you want to do something simpler. Well, you can sell files your customers can download, like PDFs, music, or ebooks. It's really all there and very easy to set up. I've been using Squarespace for a long time because of these reasons, because it is so easy to get started and build exactly what you need. So head on over to squarespace.com to sign up for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/MPU to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain name. That's squarespace.com/MPU when you decide to sign up to get 10% off your first purchase. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of the show.
Okay, so let's talk about some additional features. The idea of this is we're going to go kind of outside the box. And one of them is Little Arc. It's a window that opens when you click a link from another desktop app like Slack or iMessage in it. It opens up Little Arc with a view of what you clicked on without going into your primary window.
Yeah. In some ways, this feels like a side effect of their we don't have tabs, even though
Yeah.
they kind of do. It basically means if someone sends you a link in iMessage or some other desktop app, you're not interrupting what you're doing in your browser, right? It comes up as its own window. You can then like promote it and open it in Arc, or you can close it. If you just leave it around, they get auto archived after 6 hours by default. And I kind of like it because if it's something just like temporary I'm doing, I can do it and then close it and not disrupt what I was already working on.
Yeah, agreed. Nice feature.
Mm-hmm. Another one is how Arc manages screenshots and some collaboration. So Arc comes with a bunch of neat screenshot tools that are just built in, including a great one being able to take one long screenshot of a whole web page. That is surprisingly difficult to do in most desktop browsers, right? On
Yeah.
iOS and I think on the Mac too, there are some apps that can kind of fake it, but this I can just hit a button and I get an image of the entire web page, no matter how long it is, which is really cool. They also have a feature called easels, which is kind of like freeform. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So easels, you take a capture by hitting the Command T and typing capture, and then clicking and dragging a rectangle, and you've got like a freeform page in essence. And you can use the camera next to the easel or sidebar. Once you've taken a capture, you can add it to a new or existing easel. So you can like build kind of a screenshot, like collage, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and you can collaborate with other Arc users, or you can export it as an image, and it's pretty cool. It's like pulling these things together, and I think it would be cool to do this with Safari and Freeform. Like take a chunk of a web page and just put it in Safari automatically. It's pretty neat. I don't know how. Like I have not used it. Like it has not come up with like, oh, I wish I could have this. But if you're using Freeform already or other collaborative whiteboarding tools like this, easels may be a good fit for you. I would go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, this one I struggle with because I understand it, but I have not found an excuse to use it like you. I guess if you were building a website or critiquing a website, it would probably be really useful. Which is probably why a company that makes a website app, a browser would have it included.
Yeah, I think so.
They also have sharing. You can share your spaces, folders, or pinned tabs, and even split views with others. So, especially if they use Arc, they can just open it directly. And it's kind of a nice feature if you're working with other people and you're like, well, here's my research on this, and you push a button and it sends it to them.
You can, if you don't use Arc, you can still get those, and it opens in whatever browser you're using, but it looks like Arc. It's actually pretty cool. Like, go check out the support document for this. It's pretty neat. They also do this cool thing where you can share a quote, and so if you have a selection of a page highlighted and you share it, then if you like send it via iMessage, then that highlighted text is like the preview image in iMessage, which is a nice little touch.
Yeah. For search engines, they've got all the usual suspects, but they've also added Perplexity, which I love. So your default search engine can be Perplexity, which is something I know I've talked about it on the show, right, Stephen? Perplexity.
Yeah, we talked about it on the AI episode.
Yeah, I continue to be really impressed with that. And so now I've got it as my default search engine in my browser, which is kind of wild. And then they have a new feature they just released that's very limited right now called live folders. And the idea of this is rather than make you go search the web, it will figure out things you're interested in and it'll keep you abreast of changes. The only implementation of this I have right now is GitHub. So if you're a developer, this might be of interest to you. But the idea is if you follow a thread on GitHub and there's updates, you'll have a live folder in your sidebar that shows you anytime there is an update to that GitHub thread. And this is just the very first implementation. But I was thinking this would be really useful for programming websites as well. One more thing in the search with this app that is kind of wild is kind of an AI deployment, and it follows commands. It does AI search, but then it does actions in the application. And The trick is rather than hitting enter in a search bar, you hit shift enter. So if you hit Command T and say folder of M4 iPad Pro reviews, and you say shift enter, it creates a new folder in the sidebar and fills it with what it thinks are appropriate iPad Pro reviews. It's bananas.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And I started playing with this, just seeing how far I could push it, And one of them I wrote in was in scene where E.T. flies away. That was all I wrote in. But I hit shift enter. And it went on the internet. It found the YouTube clip that has the last 5 minutes of the movie of E.T. and started playing it. It wasn't like, I didn't even have to hit a play button. I just hit shift enter, and then the end scene of E.T. started playing in ARC. Another one that I did was I just said reservation at a nice hotel in Irvine. And it searched, found a nice hotel in Irvine, and opened me up to the reservation box where I could type in the dates and fill it in and make a reservation. Where it was actually kind of acting for me and clicking buttons and finding things and just delivering it to me at the last step. And that honestly is my mind was blown when I saw that.
It's one of those things that I feel like is actually useful. We're gonna get to some of the AI stuff. I don't think all of it is, but that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So we have spoken a lot about the desktop application, but I want to talk about the iPhone application as well, which is called Arc Search. And it is both it is a full browser. Like it syncs all of your stuff if you sign in, but that's kind of not the hook for the mobile app. And I think that's right in the name. It really wants to be a tool for quickly searching things on the web when you're on your phone. And so when you open it, it basically opens to a search box and you can search what you want. And then it does a bunch of AI stuff to go find sources, to summarize things. So if you end up on an article, it can summarize the article in a bunch of bullet points. It has a really nice reader mode that looks really nice. But there's also, I think, kind of the big thing is browse for me. And so this is a button that shows up next to your search queries. And if you tap it, it's AI tools. So again, powered by OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity to a degree, I guess. They are going out and getting that content for you, pulling and building a single page of information on the topic. And with all like the dangers of like hallucination and content, like it just lying to you very confidently, like we said in our AI episode. One thing I really like about Browse for Me is it shows what it calls verified quotes. And so as you're skimming this page it put together for you about, the new iPad Pro or whatever, it will pull content from the articles, quote it directly, and then link you directly to that source so you can check its work, which is a really big thing when it comes to these tools.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot like Perplexity, honestly, and it's on your phone in your pocket.
Yeah, so it's pretty great, and I think because it, ChatGPT was trained on stuff on the internet, but it has a deadline on that data. It's not up to date. While Perplexity and others train and can reflect what's actually on the internet, and Arc, now, and Arc Search kind of does both of those things. And I think the idea is like, hey, I just need to find something really quickly. Maybe I'm in a new city and looking for a restaurant, or I'm in the store and I can't decide between these two things. Like it can be a really useful tool to get things done really quickly. Now, you don't have to use any of that. You can just tap on your query and use whatever your default search engine is, Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, whatever. I think the hook to this app is it's for searching really quickly. And you have your other Arc stuff in there. Like I said, you can sign in, you can get your spaces, so you can have your saved tabs and bookmarks and all that stuff. But I don't really see this as a replacement for mobile Safari or even mobile Chrome, but really like a customized application for searching quickly and letting AI help you sift through the internet faster.
I mean, we are definitely at a inflection point on these new search ideas of like historically when you did a search, you got a list of 10 tabs, you had to pick one and or go through them. We talked about this on that AI episode a while ago, and that's why I was so impressed with Perplexity. This is a similar version of that. Since we really released that show, Google has announced that they're going to start doing that with their own search because they realize that they're getting taken to the cleaners by these guys. I mean, we're in the midst of a transition for search right now, and I feel like the ARC guys are right in the front of that.
No, I think they are, and it does raise the question of like, how long is this a special feature before others have it? We've seen even in the time since we recorded our AI episode that Google was rolling out AI search results in the US to mixed effect. There's some stories over Memorial Day weekend about it telling you to put glue on pizza so the cheese sticks. That's not great, but this is moving rapidly. And while there's no doubt that ARC has first mover advantage in a lot of these areas, that's something I'm going to be looking for at WWDC. And as time goes on, is what they're building, is it going to be subsumed by the big players? And then what happens? I just don't know.
Yeah, that's always the question with these things. I feel like if you're interested in it and they want money, pay for these things monthly because everything in 6 months could be completely different. So they've got another feature called Call Arc, which I don't even understand. Steven, could you explain this feature?
This is, I think, pure gimmick territory, but hey, sometimes that's fun. So this is an update to the Arc search application for the iPhone. If you have the app open and you pick it up and put it next to your ear, it will open a basically like they call it a call, and like the UI looks like the phone UI, but really it's just a recording in the app, and you ask it a question, and it's basically voice activated search, and then you hear your results read back to you, and then if you want to, you can click a button and go see the results. But it's wild. It is wild. We saw GPT 4.0 and other players in the space working with voice assistants, and like I'm talking to the AI. It is that, but they're shipping it now, and ChatGPT and others have not shipped everything they've shown off yet. But the gimmick is like you pick up your phone like you're on a call, and that's kind of funny. It works as well as you would think it would. Like in my testing, it basically almost always gets what I say right. The hit rate is higher than Siri, I think. But the results are going to be as good as the text results, right? Because it's using LLMs by OpenAI and others to get you your results. So again, what did you say on that episode? Like treat it like an intern, but this intern you get to talk on the phone to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where it'd be more convenient to do it like a phone call rather than tapping it on a screen. I'm not sure where that is.
I think that's the gimmick part.
Yeah.
But it's there. I just get the sense that these people are having fun building software. And you know what? I want to encourage that.
Yeah. Bring a little delight. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by KRCS, one of the oldest Apple premium resellers and your one-stop shop for all things Apple in the UK. Go to krcs.co.uk/podcast. At KRCS, you can shop for the latest Apple products online and in-store, book an Apple-certified repair, and even trade in your pre-loved devices. For our UK listeners, right now at KRCS, you can spread the cost with 12 months interest-free credit on any Mac over £1,000. That means you can buy the latest MacBook Air M3 from just £78 a month over 12 months, completely interest-free when you shop online at krcs.co.uk or in-store at their 3 high street stores. KRCS are one of the few places in the UK where you can customize the specs of your new Mac, whether it's a faster processor, adding more storage or extra memory, or all 3. You can do it at KRCS. You can have the exact specification you want with pricing you won't find anywhere else. Many of the popular models and configurations are kept in stock for next working day delivery when you order before 3 p.m. Monday to Friday. So why not make your Mac yours and build your own? Or choose one from stock, and as long as it's over £1,000, it qualifies for 12 months interest-free credit. With free next working day delivery on in-stock items ordered before 3 p.m., there's never been a better time to get a Mac at KRCS, your local Apple experts. Get more information at krcs.co.uk/podcast or click the link in the show notes. 18 plus only, subject to approval, and terms and conditions apply. Please spend responsibly. Borrowing beyond your means could seriously affect your financial status. Ensure you can afford to make your repayments on time by the due date. And our thanks to KRCS for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM.
So we have now come to the time of the program where we are going to talk about the AI features within Arc. Arc calls this Arc Max. That's sort of the umbrella marketing term for their AI features. And currently these are all free, but again, we could see a future where maybe they're not, or maybe they add things to them that are paid. But it is a collection of things to make browsing faster and more interactive. And a good example of this that I think is actually maybe the most interesting to me is that they've kind of reinvented searching on a web page. So say I'm reading a review of the Vision Pro by Jason Snell, and I just wanted the price. Maybe somehow I missed the price. In Safari, I could hit Command F and I could search price or search a dollar sign and try to find it. Maybe I would have mixed luck with that. Maybe I would have to, kind of figure it out. But if you hit Command F in Arc on the desktop, it will use OpenAI and Anthropic to look at that page and answer your question. So instead of just searching for a dollar sign, I can hit Command F and say, how much does the Vision Pro cost, or what is the price? And it will look at the page that I'm on. So there is a transfer of data there with these services. And then it will answer my question based on what the page says. And it will highlight it for you and tell you where it found it. And it is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of amazing. Another one that I feel like is useful is the 5-second preview. And that is if you have any link on your page open, how you're on a website and it says, well, this link has further details. You don't have to go and read the whole page. If you just hover the mouse over the link, within 5 seconds, it gives you a little pop-up summary of that page, which often is all you need. So it reads a page, summarizes it, and puts it in a pop-up window in 5 seconds. And that's pretty useful.
It is really cool. I think we've all done the thing where we kind of go down a rabbit hole and it's oh gosh, how to end up on this page. And this kind of saves you from that sometimes. Is this actually going to be a useful sort of road to go down? It's pretty cool. And they call it the 5-second preview because the machine has to go out there and look at the page and then give you a thing. But it's pretty quick and it takes you just a second to read it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. You can also access ChatGPT in the command bar. So if you just type ChatGPT, you can issue a question to ChatGPT there. That one I didn't find as useful, but there's so many different ways to do it. And at this point, at least, I've been trying to keep ChatGPT in my ChatGPT account. But yeah, if you want to do an AI LLM search, you can do that also in the command bar. And then there's a bunch of little ones. I mentioned earlier Tidy Tabs, which is one of the newer ones. But, I talked about how on the sidebar below the line, you've got all the recently stuff you've seen. But if you turn this on, it automatically organizes them for you. So right now I've got, segments for different stuff I've researched for the show, and it's all kind of organized for me. And I think that's pretty useful that my tabs get organized for me and titled.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And Arc is kind of forever going kind of behind you and keeping things neat. And that's pretty cool. It can clean up old downloads and it can do all these things. Even the renaming your tabs, right? So if you make a new pinned bookmark, it can automatically name it for you, right? And in every other browser, it's a two-step process, right? You can drag it to your bookmarks bar, and it's going to just use the title of the page. And usually that's like long and full of junk. And then you can right click and hit rename. Well, this is smart enough to kind of give you a useful name from the beginning. And you can still manually rename something, but it's just one of those little affordances made possible by this technology that keeps things running smoothly and quickly.
Yeah. It's I think there's a part of this that feels gimmicky, and they're looking for any excuse to use AI in their browser, but there's a part of it that's impressive, that they're trying to like change it up and find new ways to make browsing easier, better, faster. And just like in that video I mentioned at the top of the show, these guys aren't running Google search on everything. So they are looking for a different way to do this. And I think some of these will stick and some of them won't, but I kind of admire that they're trying it all.
I do too. And I think the way that they're doing these things, it's not super in your face. Like if you didn't want to interact with this AI stuff, you don't have to. In fact, in Arc settings, there's a whole Max tab and you can turn them off one by one. So if you don't want it to clean up your downloads, or you don't want the ask on page, you can just turn it off. They're not forcing it on you. If you want to use this as just a Chromium browser with a weird sidebar, you totally can. And you can turn all this AI stuff off, which is great. And I think the way it should be, people should be able to make their own decisions on this.
Yeah, indeed. Arc Max is the name they give to all these AI features, is turned off by default when you first install the app. It's not even turned on.
Yep, it's pretty. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah. What about boosts?
Yeah, so boosts and integrations are kind of the last kind of two sections here. Boosts are community-made customizations for websites. And it kind of takes me back to the days of like Firefox and other things where like you could kind of change the way a page looked, and there were a bunch of extensions for that. So these are they're thin. Like the list is not very long right now. Again, this browser's been out for like less than a year. But they're themes and customizations for websites like Gmail, Twitter, YouTube. So some fun examples, I think the kind of the best one, honestly, is remove shorts from YouTube. So if you have this installed and you go to the YouTube website, you no longer see YouTube shorts. You just see long form content on YouTube. And, they're doing that by just hiding it, right? Probably with CSS or something and JavaScript, but it's pretty cool. Now, if you use Gmail or Twitter on the web or Slack on the web, there are others that may tune that to your preferences. But like I said, the list is not very long, and I suspect it'll grow over time.
Yeah, I actually elected distraction-free YouTube, which I thought was really nice. It's less shiny, if that makes sense, and it doesn't pull you away as easily. So I thought that was actually an improvement over the native YouTube. And they've got one that I installed last week, and I haven't done much Amazon shopping in the last week, but they have an Amazon one that it looks to do the same thing, to make it, a little less, in your face Amazon, I'm selling you stuff, and just kind of cleans up that interface. And it worked, and my Amazon account works, and and it is a much cleaner interface. So I kind of like what they're going for here, but boosts are website dependent. Each one exists for a specific website. It's not like a plugin that works across the board.
Right.
There's a funny one here. I guess MKBHD complained that they didn't have a dark interface, and they made a YouTube interface that's matte black, called matte black for MKBHD. That's pretty funny.
That's pretty good.
These guys are, they've got some moxie, and that's kind of fun. I mean, could you imagine having the guts to bring a new browser against Microsoft, Google, and Microsoft and Google and Apple? I mean,
no.
It takes something, it takes something.
It does.
Yeah. And I skipped over integrations, but those are also important.
Yeah. So integrations are ways to get data from websites into the Arc user interface. There's some more examples of this than Boost right now, but an example is if you have your Gmail inbox on the web as a favorite, you can hover over it and get an unread, the unread number of messages and like previews of what's in your inbox. Pretty cool if you use Gmail on the web and need that sort of thing. There's one for GitHub where you can quickly see previews of pull requests and their status on hover. And then some of them are more traditional. Like there's one that enables YouTube via picture in picture, so you don't have to like do the weird right click thing.
Yeah, and there's one for Notion that I've been playing with. I kind of like. This is nice. I think it's kind of the stuff you should see as this thing gets a little more gas in it, as it gets a little more momentum.
Yeah, I think it'll be just a growing set of tools on those those web pages.
Well, we've been at it now for about a month each. Where do you stand with this Arc browser? Is it going to become your primary?
It is for stuff with David with underscore. So I had that all set up in a Chrome profile, but I kind of like that it is its own place now, and it is once you get over the learning curve of some of the sidebar stuff, I've been pretty happy with it. I wouldn't want to use it as my main browser, mostly because I like having everything synced between my phone and my Mac. But I don't need this stuff on an iPhone. Like I'm just doing this work on my Mac, and so it's kind of become my underscore browser. And I think that will continue to be the case.
I am mixed right now. I'm curious about this as my primary browser, but I'm not sold on it. I mean, usually when something new and shiny comes in my life, I need to give it time so the luster can come off. What I've done at this point is I have an Apple Notes document that I'm writing down pluses and minuses on it. And, so I've used Safari for so long and it just works. It's tried and true. Passwords work everywhere. It's energy efficient on the laptop. There's just, and it's part of Apple's ecosystem, which, is always going to be kind of tied together nicely. So there's a lot of reasons to like Safari, but Arc has definitely got my attention. That shift return thing where I could have it go get a hotel reservation for me or play ET or whatever. Boy, I really like that. The built-in Perplexity as default engine, I really liked. There's a whole bunch I like. But then in a few weeks, Apple's going to do supposedly a WWDC that's focused on AI, and maybe some of the stuff will head over to Safari, like you've been kind of talking about. And I just don't know where I'm at on it, but I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to keep using it for the next month as my primary and see how I feel at that point.
Cool. Yeah, we can do that in a future feedback episode.
Yeah. I mean, knowing myself, it's likely I'll end up back in Safari because, Safari. But but boy, I really like a lot of these features.
Yeah, me too. I think they're thinking about things in new and interesting ways, but also in ways that aren't too in your face, and that you don't have to interact with all these AI tools if you don't want to. And yeah, I encourage people to have fun making software, and I think this team is doing that.
Yeah, I really think the social media stuff has impacted me too. Watching a lot of the videos of the makers, it is a David versus Goliath battle, and you can't help but vote for David, right? And I want to see them succeed, regardless of whether they become my primary browser. All right, that wraps it up for this episode of the Mac Power Users. You can find out more about us over at relay.fm/MPU. Thank you to our sponsors today, 1Password, Squarespace, and KRCS. For you more Power Users subscribers, those that get the ad-free extended version of the show, stick around. Steven and I are going to be talking about Microsoft's M1 moment. Otherwise, have a great week.